Alright, so I want to make a video updating everyone on the new case total as usual, as well as getting into some other stories as well. So getting right into it here, Canada's up to 53,875 cases, 3226 dead. Alberta, 5573 cases, 92 dead. So again, 218 new cases yesterday. So we continue to hover around this mark. I mean, the curve has been pretty flat for the last week or two now. We have had some couple of 2 3 days up above 300 that are kind of scary, but then we've also had some days in around like 100 150. So the curve is relatively flat, and like I pointed out too, up until this point we've still averaged about, I think, 2,500 tests a day, and we're testing about 5 6,000 now. So in the first couple weeks of this, we were getting, 50 to 100 cases a day. If you double the amount of people you're testing, theoretically, you're going to double the amount of cases you discover. So having cases around 200 is still pretty normal, even compared to the first couple weeks of this. Um, like I say, Calgary's the main area affected too. I don't like anybody who doesn't want the rest of Alberta to reopen. To me, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like Edmonton should be already open right now. Edmonton should be completely normal, aside from like I say, like I always point out too, everything should be able to reopen with the caveat of keeping nursing homes quarantined. Um, Anybody over the age of 60 should strongly be suggested to quarantine, and giving people the option of staying home for another month if they want to. And like I said, it's a complete win-win. There's literally no reason why anybody should disagree with me on that point, like none whatsoever. Now the problem is you have people, we have to keep the lockdown going or we're all going to die crowd, who literally thinks that if we open things up the least bit, that, like I say, we're all gonna die, even though the death rate is, like I say, as of right now, we're looking at about 0.2%. Again, we don't know the exact number because we don't know the exact amount of people who actually have it, and that's the problem. And the other problem too is that you look at in the States, a lot of people that have had confirmed cases, a lot of people that have had confirmed deaths, or sorry, a lot of people that have had deaths from the virus more than likely didn't die of the virus. And we have multiple funeral home directors being quoted in saying that they have people who are dying that they don't believe had the virus, that they marked as dying from the virus. So like I say, by the end of this, the death rate is going to keep going. I mean, the death rate is even lower than what the numbers think it is. Like I say, my guess is that I bet you by the end of this, we're looking at 1 in 10,000, maybe even less, for healthy people under the age of 60. The average death rate probably comes down to 0.1, maybe even below 0.1% for the average, for everybody, including the old people. But it's like I say too, nobody, it's not scientific in any way, shape, or form. There's no science to back up completely shutting down a country, or even most of the world for that matter, for something that has a 0.1% death rate. There's no evidence whatsoever to back that up to. And I cannot stand all these climate change people. Oh, the science backs it up. And again, that's a completely different debate. I'm not going to get into it. But all the science backs up that we shouldn't even have locked down in the first place, let alone still be locked down. And it's like I say too, there's a high level, I think it was the CEO of Bank of America said he projects this is going to take upwards of 2 years. We're going to have a 2 year recession here, and people don't realize just how much more suffering is going to come out of a 2 year recession than what, like in Alberta, we don't even have 100 people dead yet. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? We've been going at this almost 2 months now. We don't even have 100 people dead yet. Not only that, we don't even know for sure if all these people actually died of the virus. Like, I mean, if there's people doing it in the States, people not dying of the virus and it being marked as the virus, chances are it's happening in Canada too. Now, maybe not to the same extent, but chances are it's happening everywhere. Um, so again, I just wanted to point that out. This is from Tom Quiggin. He goes on to say UK coronavirus cases could result in 18,000 more cancer deaths, as 2 million operations are postponed. And again, this problem is going to be observed in all other countries. We've seen in Quebec, for example, I think there was a 20 or 30% drop in cancer diagnosis, over the last couple months. Now, it's not like people just miraculously recovered. So again, a lot of people, have cancer right now. It hasn't been discovered, and with a lot of cancers, the main way that you live through it is for, doctors to discover it very soon, because the sooner you discover it, the more likely you are to survive. A lot of them, if you don't discover it very soon, you're going to die no matter what. We don't have the technology to save your life. So again, a lot, like I say, my guess is there's going to be more people dying of just individual things than from the virus. And the problem with that is that, we'll never know the exact numbers from either case. Again, we'll never know the exact numbers from the virus because China lied about it. The states are, and other countries probably as well, are marking people as dying from the virus when they didn't. And again, they don't keep track of. There's no way of knowing how many people are going to die of cancer that otherwise could have been prevented because we were in a lockdown. So it's like I say too, whether or not we should reopen is a simple cost benefit analysis. And the problem I really cannot stand about the we need to keep it locked down or we're all going to die crowd is they never ever point stuff like this out. Like, it's never a cost benefit analysis. It's just short sighted here and now. Who cares about even a month down the road, let alone a year or two down the road? It's just we need to shut everything down and we're all going to die. It doesn't matter if 100 million people starve to death, like the UN predicts. Who cares about those people? We need to save the 50 people in Alberta that we would otherwise not have saved. Like, to the 100 people, the 100 million people, do their lives matter less than the, what are we at? Just over 2,000, or sorry, just over 3,000, you know, 80% of those being people over like 70, 80-year-old people. Does those people's lives matter more than 100 million? Like, I don't think so. Like, it's 100 million people. And it's like I say too, even if that amount of people doesn't die, the amount of depression, the amount of suicides, the amount of, how many kids right now are getting abused? How many spouses right now are getting abused because people are struggling to pay their bills. They don't know if they have a job to go back to. They're anxious, they're stressed out. What happens when you're stressed out? You get angry, you lash out. And I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I'm not advocating for that kind of stuff. I just understand basic human psychology that kind of stuff happens too. Like, you know, being unemployed um, being unemployed versus not being unemployed accounts for, I think it's a 2 or 3 times more likelihood of suicide. Like I say, unemployed people are more than twice as likely to commit suicide as employed people. And right now in Canada, we have millions of people unemployed. In the States, they probably have 50 million people. And again, the real number is pretty much impossible to tell. So again, I just like pointing stuff like this out too, because people seem to get a very one-sided view of this whole argument. This is from Andrew Lawton. He goes on to say, even after China admits its numbers were wrong, Patty Haiti refuses to admit she was wrong to trust China. She renewed her claim to the Politburo Patty nickname. Politburo, sorry, Patty nickname for sure. Now, this just goes to show, just for all the people still, you know, I don't even, like I say, I don't even think it's a joke anymore when, when people on the right joke about the liberals in Canada being communists. Like, if they're not communists, they're as close to being communist as you can possibly be without it, because you're taking numbers from a communist government that's openly communist that were blatantly obviously wrong. Like, it's literally like 100 elephants in the room obvious that China's numbers were wrong. And yet you have I think she's the health minister, refusing to admit that the numbers were wrong when it couldn't be any more obvious. Like, 4-year-olds could, you know, have the critical thinking skills of figuring out that China's numbers were wrong, but yet some of the highest people up in our government don't have that ability. Like, seriously. And yeah, it's like I say, this government in Canada has so many issues. It's not even funny. It's not even funny. Um, but clearly, there's a bigger motive here. Either China has a lot of, I mean, they probably do have a lot of dirt on Trudeau and the Trudeau government. And on the other hand, the Trudeau government and Justin Trudeau is very fond of communist dictatorships. So I think that's where the hiccup is there too. And Justin Trudeau is, big on having his UN seat and, trying to become global dictator for all we know. And, the UN and the World Health Organization are linked, and that's part of the reason why they don't want to do that. Again, the World Health Organization has been wrong about pretty much every prediction they've made up until this point. They've more than likely done the most damage out of any one single entity by far by not suggesting closing borders. But again, closing the country's borders, they don't work. But forcing everybody to stay inside your house, which has borders, that definitely works. This imaginary 6 foot border, those work, but a massive ocean between us and eight and in China, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So again, it's just like it's the elephant in the room levels of obvious stuff, but yet still so many people fall for this kind of stuff. Um, okay, so this is something I've seen that I think is really important to talk about. Now it's from the Wall Street Journal. And they go on to say virus relief often pays more than work. Now, when you think about it in Canada, I believe it's upwards of $2,000 a month per person plus what, $500 a kid. So if you're a family of 4 with 2 kids, that's $5,000 a month. So again, people have, I've heard people say, oh, everybody wants to reopen, we just disagree on how we should go about it and all this BS. Well, no, everybody doesn't want to go back to work. If you're making $5,000 a month as a family not to work, why would you want to go back to work? Seriously, like why would you want to go back to work? Like that's quite a bit of money. I mean, you're not filthy rich. You're not even rich by any means, but you're getting $5,000 a month to do nothing. Like who wouldn't want that? So again, and this is the problem too, is that human drive, and humans are driven by incentive. You know, you can pretty much get anyone to, if you create enough of an incentive, people will do pretty much anything. It's a simple point that, it's kind of an unrelated example, but it's an example nonetheless. Most of the Germans were not Nazis. They did not agree with the government basically on that. For the simple reason that I think it was, I don't remember if it was World War One or World War Two, but I think it was around one of the major holidays. They, because they didn't fight during some of the holidays, and they played a pickup soccer game with the British or the French or whoever. It was one of the opposition. And if you were actually fully on believed in the Nazi ideology, you wouldn't have done that kind of stuff. If you actually hated the other side with that much, hatred as the government did, you wouldn't do that kind of stuff. So again, humans are driven by incentive. If you create enough of an incentive, no, not everybody. Obviously, there's not everybody, but most people are driven by incentive. And if the government pays you enough not to work, well, you're going to do that. It doesn't matter how much money you're making. It doesn't matter. You could be the smartest person with the best work ethic in the world, but if the government paid you enough to not work, you wouldn't work. So again, this is something that needs to be pointed out. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people don't want to work too is that we have de facto socialism, right? Not only do we have de facto borderline communism, like the government's nationalizing a lot of industry, all this kind of stuff. So, and we have a very large percent of the population, definitely not a majority, but a pretty good sizable, percent of the population that are socialists. They might not say they're socialists. So, oh, I'm a social democrat. I'm a democratic socialist, which is like saying I'm a democratic Nazi or a democratic communist. It's still the same policies. It doesn't matter if you slap democratic in front of it. Like, North Korea is the Democratic Republic of Korea, I believe is the official title for it. But is it democratic? Well, no. Just because you slap the name in front of there doesn't mean anything. So, that's something I just really wanted to point out. All these stories are important, which is, why I talk about them. So this is from True North, and this is from the whole Derrick Sloan thing, which I haven't talked about, which I should have been, but there's been so many big stories with the gun ban, with Alberta reopening, with some other provinces reopening, you just haven't got to it. So I want to talk a little bit about right now. Now, Derrick Sloan basically criticized Theresa Tam, and typical leftist fashion, they view any criticism of someone who disagrees with you politically, who turns out to be a minority or a woman, as sexist and or racist. And like clockwork, he's accused of being racist. And the first thing I wanted to point out here is that MPs would ask for a vote to have him removed from the CPC HQ caucus. Now, if the conservatives do this, I'm going to be very disappointed with them. No, I mean, not that I'm not already, but it'll just make me even more mad at them, because if you want to live in a anything resembling a free country, anything, like I say, anything even coming close to resembling a free country, you have to have the ability to criticize government officials. Okay, you have to have that. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And the thing about this too is he's right. Like, he's obviously right. He's blatantly obviously right. It couldn't be much. It couldn't be more of an elephant in the room how right he is, because Tam has messed up everything thus far. She recommended not closing the border, which turned out to be a terrible recommendation. She didn't support the use of masks, and she flip flopped on that. I mean, they flip flopped on everything, but now it's masks are good. Now all of a sudden borders do work. Like I say, the border of your house works, but the Pacific Ocean between us and China, no, that doesn't work. Like, come on, it couldn't be more of a stupid argument if you tried. Um, she spouted Chinese talking points, which anybody with half a brain, monkeys could figure out that China's lying, but yet they spouted that stuff. They've been wrong about everything up to this point. The reason the virus is so bad in Canada is because of people like Tam. Okay, all the pain and suffering that's going on right now is, I mean, most of it's due to China, but given the fact that Tam and Trudeau and all these people are very fond of China and their dictatorship, they get just as much blame. I don't care if China inflicted most of it on the world. Yeah, most of it's their fault, but if you side with the abusers, we're going to treat you like the abusers. That's how it works. So again, Sloan should not be kicked out. This guy should be commended. He should be commended. Now, I think he's kind of backed off a little bit again, which just goes to show that, conservatives need to grow a pair of balls. Like, seriously, the reason why the left keeps winning is the left has no principles. No matter what you do, they will criticize you, they will call you racist, they will do all this crap. And the only way you're ever going to beat the liberals is if you grow a pair for once. So, again, that's just a recommendation for anyone who isn't on the left, basically. But anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Um, check out my PayPal and email. I got links in the description. I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe. Check out my BitChute channel if you haven't already, and follow me on Twitter as well. I just created a new Twitter account, so follow me there too.